Hello and a warm welcome to the Cyber Leadership Launchpad, a brand new mentoring series brought to you by the Global Cybersecurity Forum. My name is Rebecca McLaughlin-Eastham and I'm delighted to be your host for these important conversations with pioneering women who have transformed sectors and societies as they share lessons in leadership and lasting legacy. Today we're championing the rise of women in cyber, and as part of that mission, each month your questions will be put to our guests. We're very much looking forward to hearing from you, so simply reach out across our many platforms. Today I'm thrilled to say my special guest is Silvana Koch-Mehrin, a German politician and advocate for women's advancement in leadership. She's best known as the founder and president of WPL, or Women Political Leaders, a global network committed to increasing the presence and impact of women in politics. Silvana, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today from Brussels.
Thank you, Rebecca. Pleasure to be here.
Your journey in the public sector began in Brussels, where you quickly rose to become Vice President of the European Parliament. What was it like to step into such a prominent leadership position at that stage in your career?
Well, first of all, it was a really tough time to get there. It's not presented on a silver plate or just an offer, take it or leave it. It's something that one has to be fully invested in, and going into politics often really means a choice of lifestyle. There's no weekends, there's no evenings off, because there's a lot of work with volunteers, with different parts of society, the fire brigade, the rabbit breeding association, the volunteers that come together on different parts of your constituency. So it means working a lot with different people in your constituency so that you get the mandate to represent them. Then you get, if you're lucky, into the parliament. And then you need to find ways to really make sure that what you worked for, that you can create this impact. And getting to the position of a vice president of the European Parliament was first and foremost a huge honor, and also a responsibility that I didn't take lightly, because with such an elevated position, there also comes a lot of expectation to now really deliver on what you promised.
In your role as Vice President, you chaired the high-level group for gender equality and diversity. What sort of initiatives were you responsible for, and what impact did they have?
This group of the high-level group on diversity and equality deals with the parliament itself. So it also is meant to, as a parliament, we decide on a lot of legislation, on policy for others, but we really also need to walk this talk. So this group was in charge of ensuring that, for example, in the administration of the parliament, women have the same opportunities to advance into leadership roles as men do. And what we did, for example, we set quotas for women to get into leadership, because the European Parliament is a parliament that represents 27 countries. And there is national quotas so that the different countries of Europe have their jobs. But there wasn't one for women, and more than 50% of the Europeans are women, so they should also be equally then represented. So this was one of the jobs. Also, it meant that diversity, for example, in religious beliefs was respected. So we were ensuring that all the different faith groups have their places of prayer, of worship, and would not be disrupted by others. So those things matter if you look at a very large organization like the European Parliament, with several thousand people working there, to ensure that every group of religious belief, of gender, has its space and is respected for that. That was the role of this group. And the impact that it created was that we really made sure that everybody feels that the workplace European Parliament is their workplace. And maybe a small anecdote on that. While I was member of parliament, I had 2 of my 3 children. They were born while I was in my political mandate. And all of a sudden, I realized there is no place in the parliament to change diapers. With all those many people working there, there was not a single facility to go and change the diaper of your baby in case you would need to bring it to the workspace yourself. So this was one of the things that I thought, this is unbelievable that we don't have this. So it took me a couple of months, almost the length of the pregnancy, to ensure that everybody in this place has then a possibility to bring their kids. And this is not only then accessible for women, but also for men in case of fathers want to take care of their babies.
Absolutely. Nice to see fathers bringing their kids to work as well. That leads us naturally to WPL, or Women Political Leaders, the non-profit organisation that you founded to increase women's representation and influence in political leadership. Take me back to the beginning. What inspired you in the first place? And what keeps you motivated to pursue its goals today?
I just looked at the data that's available, and it's very, very shocking that today, still more than 90% of the world's head of state, heads of government are men, and more than 80% of cabinet positions are held by men. And this is despite the fact that women excel in education, that they are incredibly capable, empathetic, skillful leaders. Politics remains to be a place where there's a huge gender gap. The World Economic Forum every year measures this gender gap, and it measures the number of years that it would take until we get to parity, when men and women are equally represented. And for the political space, it will be still 167 years. This is this year's data from the World Economic Forum. And this gap remains the same. It hasn't really been moved much in the past years. So why do I think this is important to change? Well, I always believe that it's really, really critical for good decision making to have diverse opinions, to have very different views related to those various topics and for the decision making. So women need to be at the table on all political questions. And one part that matters really in politics is that you have those networks that uplift you, that motivate you, that refuel energy for you. And this is what Women Political Leaders is about.
Silvana, let me jump in with a question from our global audience, and thank you to everybody watching for sending your questions in. They write, how do you measure the impact of WPL in increasing women's representation in politics? And can you share some examples of policies that have significantly advanced gender parity in political participation?
Absolutely. One of those elements that really shows that you are in power, that you have power, is that you have a voice, that you are heard, that your voice matters. And so this is one of the impact elements that we're creating at WPL, at Women Political Leaders, that we give those women a voice on international stages, in national contacts, online. And this leads to amplification, and this leads to that those voices are picked up elsewhere and are taken more seriously. So this is one of the many elements that we do. We also very much inspire and push for policy changes. And we've seen, for example, that countries like Mexico got very much inspired by what they saw of their peers in Iceland. When they met with women politicians in one of our fora, they worked together and they learned from each other, okay, how did you do it? How did you get to so many women in political representation? And then they discussed, okay, could we apply this as well? And so Mexico today has both in its constitution as well as in its secondary legislation the requirement to have as many women in political representation on the national level as there are men. So this is one of the many examples.
Silvana, tell me, how do multilateral women's leadership groups that you've been involved with, from the G20 Women's Engagement Group to the Council of Women Leaders, how do they serve to change the game? How are they shaking up the dynamic for aspiring women leaders today?
I believe it's really important that women have their specific spaces where they can work together and also work across geographic borders, also political groups, to realize there's something that all women in political leadership have in common. And this, again, doesn't matter if one is from Saudi Arabia, from Norway, from Costa Rica, or from Indonesia. There's something that is but it is part of the political landscape, which is deeply rooted in, well, politics was created as a space first and foremost by men and for men. And this is not different in any part of the world. Now, the ways to change this are different in different parts of the world because cultures are different, traditions are different, procedures are different, of course. So what I think is critical, like, for example, in the G20 process, that the Women 20, the W20, is there to then work with all the different other engagement groups of the G20. But the real litmus test, the real important question then is, at the G20 Top Leaders Summit, how many women are there? Because that's where ultimately the decisions are taken. And groups like Women 20 can help, of course, influence both the composition as well as the outcomes of such important leadership convenings.
Silvana, what were some of the milestone moments, the pivotal times or the key decisions that shaped your advocacy for gender equality?
Most definitely when I had my first child. It sounds like a bit of a cliche, but indeed things look different when you have your first child, because until then I had also chosen probably to say there is not much difference in opportunities that what I would have compared to what my male friends or colleagues would have. I thought, being German, my mother's generation, they had fought for the main steps to achieve gender equality. Now it's on me to really walk through those open doors and make this a reality. But then when just already when being pregnant, when sometimes it's just meant really as in a friendly way, lending a hand, there was the assumption that because I would be a mother, I wouldn't really be wanting to continue my career. And I just thought, this is odd. Why does none of my male colleagues get the questions that I get? So I thought we have to have for true equality, we have to normalize that mothers are part of the decision making. So this was definitely one critical moment for my personal journey. Of course, not all women choose to have children, but this was for me one of those pivotal moments. Another one certainly was when I realized that in politics, when it gets tough, and almost every politician has good times when everything is coming your way and things seem to be really just falling into place. And then you've got tough times when your competitors are really up on your neck. Sometimes your own party fellows, they're looking for a way to replace you. Then I realized, okay, as a woman, you don't have as strong networks most of the time as men do to carry you through that time. And so WPL definitely is also one of the ambitions of WPL is to offer that space to exchange these insights, because these are the things that you don't really read in advisory books about. You need to talk about this in a space of confidence.
You certainly don't. Maybe it's time to pen one. Arguably, no leadership journey is a straight line or an easy ascent. To that end, have you experienced setbacks or moments of self-doubt? And if so, how did you navigate them along the way?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it really gets tough and puts everything into question when, again, when you feel that your family's safety is at risk. And that's when I question myself, is it really worth it? Is it really worth doing what I'm doing? This isn't normally the case in Germany, but many politicians who become a household name, so to say, they face violent attacks, criticism, both online as well as offline. And while I said to myself, okay, this is part of my job description, an unwanted one and definitely not an acceptable one, but I can deal with that because I'm taking that decision. When those threats come to your family or your children, then everything is in a different then you evaluate very differently. Is it worth doing what I'm doing? And these were moments of big doubt, thinking, what should I really continue? Should this really be, is it really worth doing this? But yeah, usually then if you have your family behind you, then there's always a way to continue.
If we turn our attention now from your role in public office to the private sector, because you've also been an advisor for the likes of EY and Binance, tell me, when we look at the corporate and commercial spheres, what is private doing differently to public, especially when it comes to leadership and inclusion?
Yeah, let me start by saying the difference in both public as well as private sector leadership really is depending on what's the deliberate decision of the top level. If there is a decision to say, yes, we want to ensure that women are included and we see the benefit of this inclusion, then it's going to happen way faster. If it's a bottom-up approach where you need to fight for it at every step of the journey, it takes way longer and the risk of losing talent is way higher. Then it's very often felt like that's an uphill struggle and I need to deal with so many things that none of my male colleagues has to deal with. Why do I put myself into that? So decisions on the top level, on the leadership, really make a big difference in both sectors. Now, what is really faster is the private sector, and private sector is faster in innovation, private sector is faster in adapting processes, and private sector is and can be faster in making those deliberate decisions to have more women included in leadership happen. Because the talent is there. It really is, who do I want to have lead? Who do I want to have in those positions? And when I was in the fortunate situation to work with companies like EY or also Binance. EY is stronger, so then Binance, I suppose, also was sector specific. They really made the business case internally for having more women in positions of leadership and throughout the administration, building the pipeline, because they felt this is a benefit for us as a company as well as for our clients. And that was very inspiring to see.
Silvana, when it comes to mentorship, something close to my heart and to yours, you've spoken in the past about how it's often viewed as a top-down dynamic, when in actual fact, effective mentorship can be seen as peer-to-peer or even bottom-up. I'm keen to know your thoughts on the potential impact that this more fluid model of mentorship could have, and if you're seeing it adopted.
What I would love mentorship to be is that the leaders get mentored by younger people in their organizations, be it corporates, be it public sector, because the reality of younger people is a very different one to the ones that are today in leadership. Younger people today, they grow up with artificial intelligence as something that is almost a natural environment to them. They live in and through social media in a completely different way than the generation of today's leaders does. So I think this mentorship would be very useful for the leaders of today. The other way around, I would love to see sponsorship, because sponsorship means that real action is taken, so that those people who are today in positions of decision-making possibility and being able to open doors, being able to promote somebody, that this kind of sponsorship is taken forward as the mission for today's leaders.
Silvana, when it comes to women in cyber, GCF research estimates that the global workforce shortfall is around 2.8 million, with women only representing around 24% of that workforce. Give me your view on what stakeholders across government and the private sector can do to collaborate to remedy this.
Perceptions are really key in that. And that's my very strong belief. And to change perceptions, that's quite a tricky job. And cybersecurity is often associated with a very male work environment, a very bro culture driven environment where there's very little appeal for women to go into. And also the definition of what is cybersecurity can be still way too narrow. Now we've got in other places, we've seen the transition from how the term security which was maybe first and foremost one that was associated with military, has been broadened up, and security became a much bigger understanding. And then almost everybody could see, oh yeah, it affects me personally. And this also will happen for cybersecurity. Again, once there is an understanding of this is very much a topic that affects each and every one of us, then I believe more women will find the interest to go there. The capability, there's no question that it's there. It's just the changing the dynamics of who feels attracted by something that's first and foremost perceived as being a very male environment.
You're absolutely right. Perception has so much to do with it. But what other barriers do you see preventing more women entering these roles at leadership level in the cyberspace, but also tech policy?
I think it has a lot to do with representation. It has a lot to do also with, we go again to perceptions, to the stereotypes around what makes a leader and how leadership in cybersecurity defined, perceived. I would say if we do this little mental exercise, closing our eyes and thinking, okay, let's imagine a leader in cybersecurity. The likelihood of a male, probably even in a military uniform, coming head in front of our inner eye is probably quite high. So we wouldn't necessarily think of a, let's say, mid-30s, early 40s a woman being a leader in cybersecurity. So those perceptions, to change them needs a really, really deliberate effort. And my firm belief is that we need to have those decisions come top down and say, yes, we want X percent of our leaders in cybersecurity to be women to really make this change happen.
Another question for you, Silvana, from our global audience. This person asks, what advice would you give to young women or girls considering a future in cyber?
Well, I would say go for it. Do it. It's definitely the future, and it's definitely something that needs young women and their thoughts and their realities to shape what cybersecurity means in the future. So go for it.
Absolutely, go for it. What sort of perspectives do you believe that women bring to the industry? Is it different from our male counterparts?
I do very much believe so. For example, if we start with our own personal safe space online, it's much more under attack for a woman than for a man. All the data that exists there, be it provided by public institutions, be it provided by corporates, the data analysis that they do show that there is a very, very clear gender bias in online violence, in online threats. If it's about non-consensual intimate imagery, so very private pictures being shared without the person concerned saying, yes, I'm fine with that. This is very, very gendered. And this experience of your own personal vulnerability, your own personal risk, safety being at risk, that's what women, this understanding is what women can bring way stronger to such discussions. And if you start from yourself and then broaden it out to all of society, it just makes it much more empathetic and more understanding what we're talking about. It's not a theory, it's something that's reality for women. So I think that's a very, very strong argument for women to be at the table of those, to be in cybersecurity, be at the table of those who decide.
Interesting to note in light of our conversation, another piece of GCF research that states 22% of women in STEM could be interested in a career in cybersecurity with sufficient information and training. How do we make sure that they have access to this?
You know, it always takes firsts who open the path for others. We've seen that in many of the sciences, and in some sciences, it's also a relatively new thing that women are even allowed or capable, able to be part of research, to be part of teams that go out and do field work. So cybersecurity, again, needs to be those that are more the pioneers, that also get recognized, that are publicly known for the work that they're doing. And then, well, I think we need to see where do women thrive in their education? Is there a bias already in how girls are educated? How can we eliminate that bias? Does it mean we go back to those spaces that we discussed, Rebecca, in the context of multilateral organizations? Do we need to have spaces for girls alone, girls who code, girls in cybersecurity, and with this empowerment and self-confidence then go into the more diverse groups? Something that we need to observe, and GCF definitely plays a really important role in that, both in terms of the research that GCF does, as well as bringing those groups together and having a specific focus and a specific pillar in its work, looking at those matters.
Silvana, we love seeing you on the ground in Riyadh every year at the GCF annual meeting. And you've previously talked about how preconceived notions of which jobs are more suitable for men and indeed for women can sometimes act as barriers to their career advancement. What does that actually mean in practice, and how do we overcome it?
Thank you very much for that question. It's one that is really a really important one. And I can see in Saudi Arabia how those changes are made very, very fast and for the betterment of all of society. So one example, for many countries, for many years, it was very rare, if at all possible, to see a woman being in the police force. So police was seen as a male job. But then, and more countries understood, actually bringing women into the police force changes the dynamic, both for the de-escalating work that police could do, but also for a victim of aggression, for example, going then to the police and wanting to talk to somebody there. And very often those victims are women, and they feel more comfortable in confiding into a woman of the police force as opposed to a man. So this is one of those. I mean, this has to do with security, not so much with cybersecurity, the way that we discuss it here at the moment. But these preconceptions of what's a man's job and what's a woman's job means that we as societies, we don't really look into the full potential. It's like somebody brings up these examples, and especially with the Football World Cup coming to Saudi Arabia, it's like really excluding half of the potential top players out of this game, and you really, create disadvantages for your society. So we measure this every year on what are the jobs that are perceived as being male jobs, what are female jobs, and what changes are happening. And in many countries, we see that the change is slow, but in the case of Saudi Arabia, it's really interesting to see how fast that pace of change is.
Another question from our global audience, Silvana. They ask, what is the main piece of advice you would offer to women starting out in their careers, especially those with the potential to advance to leadership?
I'm always optimistic, and I really want to be optimistic and remain optimistic, because if I'm not optimistic, it's just too sad. So I'm optimistic, full stop. However, I do think that for women to hang in there and to get to leadership positions, they do have to have a thicker skin in terms of resilience, in terms of acceptance that at the state of play where we are now, that expectations to women are higher than to men. There is the saying that for women, there is the assumption of incompetence. So meaning that a woman is usually underestimated, or she's not seen as being the right person for that job, if it's one of those male jobs. So she needs to prove herself. This offers an opportunity because it means the expectations in terms of what are you capable of are lower, but the expectations on you need to deliver are higher. So this kind of resilience and understanding the stereotypes with which you are confronted on your leadership path are, I think, critical to then, not feel personally offended when you are criticized, when you are questioned in your abilities, because a lot of it is systemic, and your leadership journey will definitely help in contributing to changing these systemic perceptions that are really not helping any of us.
Silvana, as a great leader and one who's worked with so many over the years, tell me what makes a great one and what skills should aspiring leaders of today and tomorrow be looking to develop?
Well, I think what makes a great leader is empathy, is decisiveness, is ability and willingness to stand up for those that you as a leader have responsibility for, and also is humility, understanding that nobody's perfect, including yourself as a leader, and admitting I can make mistakes, or also somebody else is better. And especially when it comes to those super fast advancing technologies, sometimes the younger people are just way smarter, way better. And the leader is the one who can recognize that and uplift those that have those abilities.
And how can women in leadership influence international relations differently, say, from more traditional approaches?
I would say always, wherever you are, raise your voice. Again, voice is power. So if it's asking a question, if you're in the audience of an international conference and there's the possibility to do that, contribute to discussions online, make yourself heard, make yourself seen internationally so that you get recognized and you get seen as the person with the abilities that you have and the person that you are and the abilities that you have. That's maybe one of those approaches. Then if you go into building your public profile, for example, as somebody who wants to be involved on the international stage in public leadership, I would strongly advise from the beginning have somebody help you with your social media, because there will be a lot of nasty messages there and it drags you down. It makes you lose the fun, the belief in humankind. And after all, you do this to make the world better, right? So get somebody to help you with your social media account. And at the beginning, it might be volunteer. Later on, you can have a professional team. And then build your network, have your allies, your sisters, your girlfriends, and also your male friends and sponsors, women sponsors, men sponsors there to get you ahead on your career path, but also to be there for you when you have tough times.
Silvana, you're constantly traveling, so tell me, in which regions have you seen the most rapid progress in women's political participation, and what lessons should we be learning from that?
So the most rapid progress, I think, right now we can observe in the Gulf region. The pace of change is really, really fast, and I don't think there is a precedent for that. Saudi Arabia has now an assistant speaker of the Shura Council and a double-digit number of women being representative in the Shura Council. In the UAE, there is parity. There are really one of the global leaders even. Europe isn't doing so badly, but it's, of course, a way, way longer process, right? It started way earlier. And given the fact that Europe started so early, we're still not far enough. So the Gulf region, in a way, shows Europe and other continents who have been talking about more women in political leadership for a longer time, that actually, if you want to do it, you can do it. It really brings us back to what's the leadership decision.
And lastly, given that you spend so much time on planes, I presume you always have a good book with you. So tell me, what's something inspiring or fantastic that you've read recently that you would recommend to others?
You know, I'm always torn between reading biographies of people that I really find inspiring, or literature that is just really fun to switch off and to relax. So books that I really like and I read again, it's and it's something that I shared initially with my daughters. I have three daughters. That's Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls. And it's an easy read. It's always 1 page, 2 pages, and it's about these rebel girls, those women that created change. And it's 1 or 2 pages on each of them and recognizing them. And just it's a nice reminder that there's ambition to get more women into leadership or to make equality a normal thing. is one that where many of us are working on. So that's one of the books, for example.
Are you proudly raising 3 rebels with a cause?
I'm trying to also have 2 sons, so yeah.
2 sons also. Well, they can be rebels too, I'm sure.
Exactly. Very important male champion. He for she's.
Absolutely. In closing, what's your key summation of our conversation today? Obviously, you're our debut guest for such an important initiative. This Launchpad will reach a lot of people. What message do you want to leave people with, Silvana?
I would very strongly emphasize you can be what you can see. So this relevance of leadership, of having those women out there who are showing it's possible for women as much as it's possible for men to be leaders in cybersecurity. This is an inspiration to so many other women, girls, which then can do this and which will be creating the future talent that we will need for a world that increasingly needs experts on cybersecurity.
And there we have to leave our conversation, sadly, but it's been wonderful to talk to you today. Thank you for your time, Silvana. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. It was really great talking to you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Well, that wraps up this session of the Cyber Leadership Launchpad. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. And thank you for sending through your questions for my special guest. Please continue to do so. We greatly value your feedback. And I'll be putting your thoughts to our VIP guests in the hot seat each month. Do connect with our Cyber Leadership Launchpad community online. And I'll see you again next time. Until then, take care and goodbye.